G'day, this is Dimitri Lascaris coming to you for Reason to Resist from Montreal, Canada on December 13th, 2025. Today in the MAGA movement, there is a civil war raging over US support for Israel. And Israel is losing that war. Badly, in fact. Due to its shocking depravity, the genocidal regime confronts an array of threats to its survival, but arguably none of those threats is more existential than the growing condemnations of Israel in the American conservative movement. Today, the two most prominent critics of Israel among American conservatives are almost certainly Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens. Each of them has a huge following. On YouTube alone, Tucker Carlson has 5.1 million subscribers. Just on YouTube, Carlson's videos almost always generate more than 1 million views apiece, and often the views of his videos are in the millions. On YouTube alone, Candace Owens has even more subscribers than Tucker Carlson at around 5.7 million. Like Carlson's videos, her videos average over 1 million views apiece and generally, or at least fairly often, generate views in the millions. Together, the two of them are probably reaching tens of millions of viewers a month. And by all indications, the majority of those viewers are conservatives in the United States. This is an unmitigated public relations disaster for the genocidal Israeli entity. To understand just how dire the situation has become for the genocidal entity, I'm going to take you through some of the most recent commentary on Israel and the Zionist lobby from these two outspoken critics in the MAGA movement of Israel. Frankly, what I'm about to show you blows my mind. I'm still having difficulty believing that the things you are about to see and hear are being said and done by two highly influential figures on the American right. I've frankly never seen anything like it. Let's start with Tucker Carlson's recent visit with Palestinian children from Gaza who have been maimed by Israel's genocidal military. Watch this.
Murdered tens of thousands of children on purpose and then locked the doors of Gaza, shot dozens and dozens and dozens of journalists so no one can film what's happening. And so the other day we thought, for the first time, we would go see what this looks like. What the hell? All these kids with their limbs blown off. This little girl looked just like my goddaughter with no fingers. Like, is she in Hamas? Why do we have anything to do with this? It's not just the crime, children whose faces are mangled by U.S. munitions. The real crime is the way that the supporters of this atrocity are justifying it by saying out loud, well, they're all Hamas because they're all in Gaza. What they're describing is the concept of blood guilt, and the belief is God favors some but not others, and that is the enemy of Western civilization.
You know, in the American mainstream discourse today, there is probably no greater sin than to humanize Palestinians. Well, Tucker Carlson just sinned 20 times over. This short video has nearly 200,000 views on YouTube. And I don't know about you, but my strong impression from that and other recent commentary from Tucker Carlson is that he's speaking to people from the heart, and whatever disagreements we may have with him, particularly those of us like me who reside on the political left, I commend the man for his courage. The easiest thing for him to do would be to continue to toe the Zionist line. But apparently his heart has gotten the better of him. I'm going to post a link to that short video in the description to this report on YouTube, and I do encourage you to like it and share it widely. In Doha, Tucker Carlson just interviewed Qatar's prime minister. In the interview, Carlson asked pointed questions about Israel bombing Qatar. He even challenged the claim that Trump did not know about Israel's plan in advance. But perhaps the best part of that interview was Tucker's question about whether Qatar would help pay for Israel's demolition of Gaza. And here's what the Qatari prime minister had to say.
Your country has sent money to Gaza for humanitarian reasons. That's your position. Basically paying to help the people who are being bombed by Israel. Now there's the question of who rebuilds Gaza, which has, of course, been completely destroyed, and who pays for it. And I wonder well, I don't wonder, I just imagine with total certainty that you will be asked to pay for the rebuilding of Gaza. Why would you do that? Why would you rebuild a region that's been destroyed by a country that also bombed you?
Well, look, Tucker, here, there is like a very, an ironic situation when you look at like two conflicts happening at the same time, and you are hearing like many about when it comes to the Russia-Ukrainian conflict, that Russia should fund all the reconstruction and their assets should be seized to fund all the reconstruction of Ukraine. While when you are talking about Gaza and Israel, flattened this land, and you say that Israel has the responsibility to rebuild what it's destroyed, they will tell you, no, you will have, as a region, you will have the responsibility to do so. And it's really a very ironic double standards when you look at it. From our side, as a state of Qatar, we will continue supporting the Palestinian people. We will do whatever to alleviate their suffering, but we are not the ones who are going to write the check to rebuild what others destroys. That's basically our position. But also, we will not let the Palestinian people at dry if they are not helped or they are not funded.
Now, how refreshing it is to hear somebody point out the obvious hypocrisy in the Western government's position. They are not only demanding that Russia pay for the reconstruction of Ukraine, they are prepared to outright steal $300 billion in Russian central bank assets in violation of their own domestic laws and international law in order to impose the cost of the war, which they did so much to provoke between NATO and its proxy on one side and Russia on the other. Meanwhile, they are demanding that Arab states whose citizens are utterly outraged and disgusted by what Israel has done to the Palestinian people foot the bill for the reconstruction of Gaza, assuming that Israel will even allow it to go forward, or that, for that matter, the Trump regime will do so. But quite apart from that, it appears that Donald Trump himself has gotten the memo from the Qatari Prime Minister. Have a look at this report from the Times of Israel, published only yesterday. Israel agrees to U.S. demand to pay for massive Gaza rubble clearing operation. The United States has reportedly pressed Israel to assume responsibility for clearing the vast rubble left behind by more than 2 years of war in the Gaza Strip, a demand that could burden Jerusalem with a massive multi-year engineering project costing upward of $1 billion. All of this demand, which apparently has now been embraced by the Trump regime, that Israel pay for its wanton destruction of one of the most densely populated areas in the world, is coming against the backdrop of what is a looming financial crisis in Israel. Recently, the Nobel Prize winning economist Paul Krugman, who writes a column, has for many years for the New York Times, published a 30-minute piece on his YouTube channel, which I just happened to find by accident, in which he said there are red flags in the fiscal conditions of the Israeli state, arising in large part from the huge costs it has incurred in connection with the multi-front wars it has been waging in the last several years, and the indirect costs as well, for example, reconstructing damaged infrastructure within Israel itself, caring for disabled veterans, and there are probably tens of thousands of them at this stage within the genocidal Israeli military. So if you now tack on to that, when Krugman offered this analysis, he did not assume that Israel was going to have to foot the bill for the demolition or the reconstruction of the demolished Gaza Strip. If you add that to the cost Israel has to bear, then Israel is in a dire financial situation indeed. Now, there's more from Tucker Carlson when it comes to Israel. What I'm about to show you will undoubtedly plunge Zionists into a frenzy of vitriol. Tucker just interviewed UN Special Rapporteur Francesca Albanese. Yes, Francesca Albanese, whom the Trump regime has sanctioned for her tireless and eloquent defense of Palestinian human rights. Here's an excerpt from Tucker's interview of Albanese, which was published just 2 days ago. In this excerpt, Tucker prepares his audience for Albanese's appearance by addressing the crime of collective punishment. Here's what he had to say.
It's hard even to know where to begin, but we made the point. You cannot practice group punishment.
Just before I continue this clip, I should have told you that the background to his comments, what you're hearing now, is that he just showed an excerpt of an interview with this depraved U.S. politician, Randy Fine, who was basically saying that because, a substantial portion of the population of the Gaza Strip supports Hamas, therefore, what Israel has done to the entire population of the Gaza Strip is justified. So this is what prompted this commentary from Tucker Carlson.
Punishment. We do not believe in blood guilt. Randy Fine is the enemy of Western civilization, that way of thinking. And by the way, where does that line of thinking lead? Well, it leads to the Nazis, among other places, among many other examples. Of course, I'm mad at this Jew, therefore I'm going to round up all Jews. That's where that leads. It leads to genocide, and it's led to exactly that in Gaza. And we have to just say that out loud. Not only is it not anti-Semitic to say that out loud, it is the prophylactic against, the defense against anti-Semitism. When you say, no, not all people are responsible for the actions of people who share their name or language or physical location or religion or genetics. Like, no, every person is responsible for his own decisions and actions. We do not murder the children of people we don't like. And when we're caught murdering the children of people we don't like, we hang our head in shame and we weep and we apologize and we ask for forgiveness. We do not go on Piers Morgan and brag about it. We do not attack anybody who calls us out on it as a hater. When we've been caught justifying murdering children, we do not behave that way. And if we continue to behave that way, things will fall apart really, really fast. But unfortunately, we are behaving this way. And anyone who calls it out is treated as worse than the perpetrator of it. Oh, that's genocide. No, you're the criminal for saying that. Really? You want to live in a society that rewards the virtuous and punishes the criminals. You do not want to live in the opposite. And that's exactly where we're going.
What I find so effective and powerful in this argumentation that Carlson is offering is that he's simply appealing to basic principles of humanity to which most members of society ascribe. You know, the idea that you punish the guilty for their actions, but not the innocent for the actions of the guilty. The idea that you do not murder children. The idea that you do not collectively punish entire societies for actions taken by an element within that society that offend you. This is just basic human decency, core values of the vast majority of people in any society today, or at least most societies today. And I think that is a very powerful argument, which at the end of the day, the Zionists are going to fail to counter because it just appeals to our basic sense of humanity. Now, after excoriating with total justification this depraved psychopath, Randy Fine, for blaming the entire civilian population of Gaza for the acts of Hamas, which he regards as unjustifiable, Tucker then invites Francesca Albanese into the conversation and begins by asking her an open-ended question. He's not trying to put any limits on what she can say. He just wants to know, what is it that caused the Trump regime to sanction her? And in putting that question to her, he is, I think, quite consciously putting the spotlight on what Trump himself has done in regard to Francesca Albanese. Here's what happened.
You call it the murder of innocents. It doesn't even matter what the name is. People who did nothing wrong are being killed by the Israeli government using American tax dollars. That's a fact. We met some of them. And what happened to her next? Well, that tells you everything about where we are in a relationship with our closest ally, Francesca Albanese, I hope, joins us now. Francesca, thank you so much for coming on. And I'm going to stand back and let you talk. If you would just describe what you said about what's happening in Gaza, and then tell us what happened to you in the United States after you said it.
Absolutely. Thank you, Tucker, for having me. I've been a special rapporteur for the United Nations, not the US, since 2022. And in this role, I'm asked by the United Nations to document and report on the violations committed by Israel as the occupying power in the occupied Palestinian territory, of which Gaza is a part, but it is also the West Bank and East Jerusalem. And after 1 year and a half, after October 7, Israel started a brutal attack, which was the fifth in 17 years against the Gaza Strip. And 5 months later, I suggested that what we are seeing could constitute genocide in a report that had the title Anatomy of a Genocide. After another 6 months, I said, I do confirm that this is genocide and it's part of a colonial erasure of the Palestinian people. Israel is committing genocide because it aims to erase Palestinian presence from the occupied Palestinian territory. And it's a long trajectory that has led us to here. Then I looked at in the other two reports, I looked at the complicity of the private sector, including many businesses. Many are in Europe, others are in the so-called global south, many are in the United States. And the complicity that has sustained the economy of the occupation for decades, and there are people who have profited from this and Israel's impunity, including as this economy turned genocidal. During the 2 years of genocide, while many Israelis were losing their income, their businesses, their livelihood, the Israeli stock exchange has kept rocketing, increasing its value of 213%. And after this, I get sanctioned by the United States.
This is a very, very important point that Francesca Albanese is making. She's saying, I first came out with a report that it looked like Israel might be committing genocide. That didn't attract sanctions from the United States government. Then she came out with a report and said, I'm pretty sure that Israel's committing genocide. That didn't attract sanctions from the United States government. What attracted sanctions from the United States government, she's making this point, I think, quite clearly and intentionally, was when she began to draw the connection between the genocide and the corporatocracy. Talking, for example, about how the Israeli stock market soared as Israel was committing. Just think about how sick this is, that the Israeli stock market experienced a 213% increase while Israel was committing genocide before the eyes of the world. That tells you all you need to know about the depravity of capitalism. And that was the thing that provoked, finally, the Trump regime into imposing devastating sanctions on Francesca Albanese. The fact that Francesca is being permitted to make this point, this connection between the complicity of the corporatocracy and what she has personally suffered at the hands of the Trump regime on a platform like that of Tucker Carlson's is nothing short of remarkable. Because after all, the conservative space is where you hear the greatest and most aggressive defense of the corporatocracy and this whole concept of free enterprise, which, by the way, is a fraud because ultimately the economy is rigged in favor of the oligarchy. It isn't free enterprise in any meaningful sense of the word. But this idea that attacking the corporatocracy, will provoke the U.S. government, but criticizing a genocide won't. That is anathema to the philosophy that predominates on the right of the political spectrum, and it is just really extraordinary that Tucker Carlson is giving, somebody like Francesca Albanese free rein to express this view and to make these vitally important connections. And at this point, I just want to digress and say this to our comrades in Italy. Wouldn't it be a wonderful thing if Francesca Albanese became the Prime Minister of Italy one day? I don't know her personally. I have no idea whether she has any political ambitions. Personally, I doubt that she does based on everything that I've seen from her. She doesn't seem like the kind of person who would, covet the opportunity to enter electoral politics. But if by some chance she could be permitted to do that one day, finally the Italian people would have a leader who is willing to stand up to the United States government. This clown, Giorgia Meloni, came along, holding herself out as some kind of Italian nationalist, and she's going to put the interests of the Italian state first. She has proven herself to be every bit the vassal of the United States as Keir Starmer, Emmanuel Macron, Rishi Sunak, Merz, Schultz. She's no better than any of those clowns. She doesn't give a damn about the interests of the Italian people. She's more interested in advancing the agenda of the Zionists in Washington and Tel Aviv than protecting the interests and core values of the Italian nation by a wide margin. But when you have somebody like Francesca Albanese, who, standing alone in this position, for which she's probably being paid nothing, because usually special rapporteurs are volunteers, despite all the abuse that they take, those who report on the situation in the occupied Palestinian territories. And in order to, stand by her values and her principles, she's willing to endure sanctions, direct sanctions, devastating sanctions have had a profoundly negative impact on her life from Washington. And that has not quieted her one iota. That is somebody who is likely to stand up for the interests of our brothers and sisters in Italy. So if by any chance she's interested in entering politics one day, I would love to see her replace that abject vassal, Giorgia Meloni. And I feel confident that more and more Italians feel exactly the same way. So let's return then to Tucker Carlson. Many people contend that Tucker remains a supporter of Donald Trump. But personally, I'm having more and more difficulty with that claim. At a bare minimum, Carlson's commentary about U.S. support for Israel is an implicit condemnation, but a powerful one, of a core tenet of Trump's foreign policy, perhaps the central tenet of Trump's foreign policy, and that is unqualified, lavish support for Israel and its agenda of utter domination of the region of West Asia. Even if Carlson says he continues to support Trump, and if he does say that, he might be saying it simply to keep Trump supporters interested in his commentary and his journalism. He's trying to avoid alienating them so he can continue to have an impact on their thinking about whether or not supporting Trump is the right thing to do. Nonetheless, whatever he may say about being a supporter of Donald Trump, his relentless and powerful critiques of U.S. support for Israel are likely to diminish voters' support for Trump, and I would be very surprised if Tucker Carlson doesn't understand that. And by the way, the video I just showed you of Tucker condemning collective punishment, that enemy of humanity, as he put it, Randy Fine, and commending and platforming Francesca Albanese, that currently has about 830,000 views on YouTube. Again, I'm going to put a link to that video in the description of this report. Please watch it, share it, like it. That's the kind of video that we need more people to see. Now, this brings me to Candace Owens. In recent months, almost every episode of Candace Owens includes devastating criticisms of Zionism, the Israel lobby, and the genocidal Israeli entity. Just as an example, in one episode published a few weeks ago, she referred to supporters of Israel as vermin. This type of caustic language is not exceptional for Candace Owens nowadays. As is well known, Candace Owens has dissected meticulously the official FBI narrative around the murder of Charlie Kirk. Without doubt, she has raised suspicion in the minds of many, and again with complete justification, about whether Israel had a hand in Charlie Kirk's murder. Kirk was so popular among American conservatives, particularly young American conservatives, who may one day become leaders of the United States, that if a broad swath of them suspect that Israel had a hand in his murder, then Israel will inevitably lose a lot of support from the Republicans. And Israel has already lost support, in fact, destroyed its standing among a majority of Democrats and probably independents as well. So, the right of the political spectrum is really the last vestige of support for Israel in American public discourse. And so Candace Owens' special or skeptical analysis of the FBI's narrative surrounding the murder of Charlie Kirk is nothing short of a public relations nightmare for Israel. Until recently, Erica Kirk, the widow of Charlie Kirk, had remained silent about Candace Owens' criticisms of the official FBI narrative. But all of that changed within the past few days and with a vengeance. Before I share with you what Erica Kirk is now saying about Candace Owens, I feel obliged to offer some observations about Erica Kirk, and I'm going to be blunt. In my opinion, Erica Kirk is a fraud, as are all self-professed Christians who support Israel. It is simply impossible to reconcile support for Israel with the core teachings of Jesus. I myself, at an earlier stage of my life, read the New Testament 7 times, so I think I know a thing or two about what the core teachings of Jesus were. Jesus, amongst other things, emphasized the sanctity of children. Israel, however, murders children and does so on a massive scale. Jesus preached the defense of the weak and the oppressed. Israel is a brutal oppressor and a vicious exploiter of the vulnerabilities of the weak. Jesus also preached nonviolence, whereas Israel engages on a daily basis in the most extreme forms of violence and then brags about it. I could go on, but that should be sufficient to persuade you that you simply cannot reconcile the core values of Christianity with support for Israel. So on that basis alone, I say that Erica Kirk is a fraud. But it goes beyond the contradictions between her support for Israel and her claim to be a Christian. Have a look at this.
I love you. I love you. I love you.
I know.
I love you. I love you. God bless you.
So there you see Erica Kirk adorned generously with gold and diamonds, her immaculately manicured hands, and apparently there was a camera right over her shoulder as she bid farewell to her slain husband lying in a coffin. And then obviously consented to the publication of the video that was taken of her in this extraordinarily, or what should have been normally, an extraordinarily painful and intimate moment. Now, I just want to show you yet again this video. In the upper right-hand corner, you will see, courtesy Instagram, Miss Erica Kirk. So it appears that Erica Kirk, or whoever administers her Instagram account, actually posted this video. This was not something that was done without her consent. This was, if you ask me, my honest opinion about this, it looks a hell of a lot like a public relations stunt. And I can't think of anything more indecent than using the death of a loved one to promote some image of yourself or some organization that you're being appointed to represent, like TP USA. This whole thing was completely and utterly unseemly. Like many people, I've lost people who are close to me. I lost my mother, I lost my father, I lost my sister after a long and terrible struggle with cancer. And I just put myself in the position of somebody like Erica Kirk and say, would I want a camera over my shoulder as I'm standing at the coffin of my loved one and bidding them farewell for the last time? And then would I post that to the entire world? Not in a million years. That's not the way people normally behave. And frankly, as I said, I find this terribly unseemly. In any case, as I mentioned a moment ago, Erica Kirk broke her silence on Candace Owens' criticisms of the FBI's official narrative surrounding the murder of her husband, Charlie. She did so in an interview with Uber Zionist Barry Weiss. In her typical hard-hitting style, Owens began in her reaction to this interview by offering some blistering commentary on Miss Weiss. And this is what she had to say.
Teased the interview with Barry Weiss. It's being termed a town hall. And Barry is obviously just a Tel Aviv agent. Her entire background story, her rise, her studying in Tel Aviv, her family ties, the hand of Midas pulling her through the ranks a la Jeffrey Epstein. Despite her sub-average intelligence, she's not interesting. She somehow becomes a chief over at CBS News. Right? This actually, what I'm saying about Barry Weiss, this gets into Tucker's quote unquote problematic speech at SAS when he jumped on stage and basically asked that question. How are all of these subpar people becoming billionaires? The rest of us have to work forever. They're not interesting. They're not talented. And they just seemingly are just getting all of this money and opportunities offered to them. This is clearly not a meritocracy that we're living under. It feels more like, and I'm saying this, more like a cartel. Okay, Barry Weiss is actually one of the people that we should study when it comes to being unimpressive and just getting handouts anyways. It's like welfare. I feel like she's on welfare. Like we all have to work and she gets promoted.
Yeah, that's right. Corporate welfare, to be precise. After studying history at Columbia University, Weiss worked at a series of Zionist media outlets, including the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times. The Times of Israel, an uber-Zionist media outlet, describes Weiss as a conservative. So if those right-wing lunatics think she's a conservative, you can imagine how right-wing Weiss herself must be. In 2018, Weiss said she believed the sexual assault allegations against U.S. Supreme Court Justice nominee Brett Kavanaugh were real, but nonetheless questioned whether they should disqualify him from serving on the Supreme Court because he was only 17 when he allegedly assaulted Christine Blasey Ford. As of 2024, Weiss had reportedly visited Israel over 15 times. After highlighting Weiss's abject mediocrity, Candace Owens aired the key exchange between Weiss and Erica Kirk. And here's what happened in that exchange.
Caster Candace Owens, okay? At one time, a friend of Charlie's, at one time, an employee of Turning Point. She has been one of the main peddlers of these conspiracies, and she is making a huge amount of money on it. She is building her business off of these lies. What do you want to say to her and the other people that are putting these lies out into the world right now?
Stop. That's it. That's all I have to say. Stop.
Now, if you're worried that your propaganda agent is so incompetent an actress that she might flub her lines, you make those lines as simple as possible, which is apparently what the script writers for the terrible actress Erica Kirk did. Stop. That's all I have to say. Stop. It's pretty hard to screw up those lines. Now, Candace's first response to this exchange was to highlight the hypocrisy of Barry Weiss condemning Candace for making money. Let's hear what Candace had to say about that.
This is just, to me, I'm going to also let you know, they pre-recorded this. Obviously, I told you this yesterday from about 11 o'clock to 4 p.m. I have sources just everywhere, CBS News, the people that were in the audience I showed you were emailing me, and they had to do multiple takes because Barry wanted to read a prompter. These questions were pre-submitted, okay? And I would like to respond to this loaded question. What would you like to say? The podcaster Candace Owens, and I'm not even going to address this repeat talking point about people making money, except for the people that have actually made off of all of the money, millions upon millions of dollars. But this is the new thing. It's like if you keep doing what you were already doing in podcasting or keep doing what you were already doing and doing ballistics on YouTube, if you catch a bunch of views, they want to convince you that like you wake up and you turn into a millionaire. Building her business. What are you talking about? I already had this business.
Now, after leaving the New York Times, Weiss founded a media company called, ironically, the Free Press. A couple of months ago, media conglomerate Paramount acquired this piece of toilet paper for $150 million. Paramount is controlled by the family of uber-Zionist billionaire Larry Ellison. So basically, Weiss earned massive amounts of money for spreading pro-genocide propaganda. What's worse, I ask you, making a living from supporting and justifying the genocide, or making a living from condemning it, which is the worst accusation you could make against Candace Owens at this stage. And by the way, for the record, I myself make no money from condemning genocide, because the revenue generated by our YouTube channel is not enough to cover the expenses of running the channel, and I personally pay the difference out of my own pocket. But nonetheless, I'm not going to hold it against Candace Owens if she decides on her profitable podcast. I assume it is, with that size of an audience, probably very profitable. But I personally am not going to hold it against her if she devotes so much of her time and energy to exposing the depravity of the elites and condemning Israel's genocide and alerting people on the right of the political spectrum, in particular, to the crimes that Israel is committing. If that's the way she makes a living, and she makes a good living doing that, I say good on her. Now, after blasting Weiss and Kirk for their abject hypocrisy, and by the way, Erica Kirk is undoubtedly a wealthy individual as well, Candace Owens took the time to catalog all the lies that she has identified that have come out of TPUSA in relation to the killing of Charlie Kirk. And here's some of what she had to say in that regard.
Some of those lies. You know, Mikey had blood all over him. Okay, Mikey has offered that his dad was confused. I'll accept that. Well, I didn't lie about that. Rob McCoy lied. His father also said he called his father first. Maybe Rob McCoy was confused. Mikey being a hero for walking away doesn't feel honest. Charlie's neck stopping a 30-06 bullet because he ate healthy and had strong bones. It was a modern day Christian miracle. That feels like a pretty big lie. Okay.
And by the way, that has been backed up by numerous experts in firearms and ballistics. The idea that a 30-06 bullet, or a bullet fired from a 30-06 rifle, would cause such minimal damage to the neck of Charlie Kirk, as shown in the videos of his killing, is frankly laughable and an insult to our intelligence at this stage. But there's more here about the huge gaping holes in the FBI's narrative.
Charlie never wavered in his support for Israel was a nasty lie. Maybe Barry want to prep. Like, what do you want to say to the people that literally lied about what Charlie was living through in the last weeks of his life? Stop, Josh Hammer. Stop, Bibi Netanyahu. No, I'm sorry. Barry Weiss is here. We're not going to get to that.
Well said. Why isn't Erica Kirk telling Bibi and people like Shapiro to stop lying about the change of heart that Charlie Kirk was having towards the end of his life in relation to Israel? But as you saw there, those were only the first 5 lies that Candace Owens and her audience members, who have been very instructive, very helpful in exposing the defects, the flaws in the FBI's narrative. That was only 5 of the lies that they've identified. There were, I think, another 10 or 15 of them. So what is abundantly clear at this stage is that there is ample and compelling reason to question the FBI's narrative around the killing of Charlie Kirk. Whatever the truth may be, we should all be able to agree, if we're truly interested in knowing what happened to Charlie Kirk, that there are questions that need to be answered. And, the FBI and TPUSA appear to have absolutely no interest in answering them at all. In fact, all they're interested in doing is encouraging or sending Erica Kirk, the widow of Charlie Kirk, to go out and to accuse people like Candace Owens of lying about the FBI's narrative without identifying a single damn lie. And so all of this really raises an uncomfortable question. Erica Kirk seems determined to stifle legitimate questions about the FBI's narrative. If that's the case, and I think that that's the best interpretation of her behavior to date, then it behooves us to ask, whose side is Erica Kirk on? Is she on the side of her deceased husband, or is she on the side of Israel? I leave you, the audience members, to ponder that question. This is Dimitri Lascaris coming to you from Montreal, Canada on December 13th, 2025.